Hey, CJN podcast listeners, Michael Freeman here, executive producer. I wanted to share that the CJN has earned 6 Simon Rockhour Awards this month, the Jewish Pulitzers, as some folks call them. We took home awards for magazine writing and design, and for feature stories on a Holocaust music project, BDS on Canadian campuses, and 4 women who discovered they were sisters in their golden years, thanks to 23andMe. But we can't create award-winning journalism without your help. If you value independent Jewish journalism, please consider supporting us today at thecjn.ca/donate.
Our community, of course, is dwindling. There was a time when you would have to ask people would you mind moving down so I can sit down? In my case, I have the whole row to myself now.
Last weekend, the historic Orthodox Synagogue in Moncton, New Brunswick, was full again. More than 135 descendants of the families who built Tiferes Israel Synagogue, Moncton's first and only Jewish community hub, returned to celebrate the building's centennial. The organizers gave the reunion a Yiddish name, Kum A Heim. It means come home. A fitting title since many of the people who came back haven't lived in Moncton for years, even decades. Today, the synagogue's roof and windows need repairs. A new mobility lift has finally made the basement social hall accessible. And with only about 100 Jewish families left in the Moncton area, they still hold regular Shabbat services and maintain a mikveh. Its rabbi now travels from the U.S. once a month. The preschool operating in the building is now non-denominational. And while newer Jewish immigrants from Israel and the former Soviet Union have settled in Moncton, many take part in holiday celebrations, but they don't regularly attend synagogue services. Still, organizers hope the emotion and the fundraising from the Kum A Heim weekend will help carry the Moncton Synagogue into its 2nd century.
It was nice to meet, I want to say the younger people that I hadn't really gotten to know before. And I think there was like a kind of a good bond made that way. So I think it's something that can move forward with the synagogue and with the community.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. Welcome to North Star, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, made possible thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. The reunion weekend included Kabbalat and Saturday morning services, sold-out dinners, speeches recalling what it was like to grow up Jewish in Moncton, the unveiling of commemorative plaques, the planting of a tree to mark the synagogue's next century, and plenty of time to reconnect with people many hadn't seen in decades or, in some cases, had never met before. It wasn't simply a birthday party for a building. It was a reunion of generations. For some of the oldest attendees, it might also have been their last chance to return and walk through the historic Jewish cemetery, where many members of Moncton's founding families are buried. I know the community a little bit myself. I lived in Moncton in the mid-'80s when I was cutting my teeth as a CBC radio reporter, and the Jewish community welcomed me from the day I arrived. So hearing these stories brought back memories of my own. On today's episode, we'll hear from people whose lives have been intertwined with Tiferes Israel for generations. Later, Audrey Lampert. She's the descendant of one of Moncton's founding families, the Addises, and a longtime community leader. She shares what she told the guests about the history of her community on Friday night. But first, let's begin with some of the people who brought this reunion to life. Sandra Rose now lives in Fredericton. Her cousin Anne Jockelman still lives in Moncton and helped feed the guests for the 3-day reunion, together with the food committee, and spent hours cooking in the synagogue's kosher kitchen. I asked them why bringing everybody home mattered so much.
We celebrate 100 years. Our grandfather was very instrumental in having the synagogue built. It is, for me, a place that I can reflect and remember all those that came before us, those that joined us, and those that are no longer here.
And what was the family's profession at the time? How did they make a living?
Our grandfather sold rags and dried fish to the fox farmers by horse and carriage.
Yeah.
And then, as time progressed, he became a businessman. He went into the cattle business, and then he bought properties, and thank God became very successful.
Sandra Rose's grandfather arrived in Moncton from Eastern Europe in 1921 from Lithuania, and many of the Jewish immigrants who settled there in the early 20th century found opportunity in the growing railway and commercial town. The first Jewish families worshipped in people's homes before raising money 10 cents at a time to buy land on Steadman Street and build a permanent synagogue. The building's now stood for 100 years.
Just speaking what Anne said, when I was first asked about it, I thought of my grandfather, and I thought of how he was a quiet man, but he was a very prominent man. When he spoke, you listened, right?
Yeah.
And he thought of the synagogue as his home, and he helped. They were raising 10 cents a week back then for the building fund, and just thinking of all of that, I thought, well, this is a home. And so many people from back then, their parents or their grandparents or their great-grandparents, they're in the walls of the synagogue. They're really here in the synagogue. And it is their home, whether they came from, New York or whether they came from down the street. It's like, this is your home. So we wanted everybody to feel like they were coming home to something.
The organizers honestly had no idea how many people would come. At first, they hoped for 50, and then registrations kept climbing until the fire marshal said stop.
Then it was, oh my God, we're up to 75. When we hit 100, he said, panic started to set in. And then finally at the 135, it was, I think we're successful.
Yours is a functioning synagogue. Tell us a bit about the community today.
Well, Friday night, even though we'd love to have a minyan, it's very seldom. But Shabbat services, yes. We have been very successful. Sometimes we have to wait a little bit, but the 10th man always walks in. In the last year, I'd say maybe 3 times we haven't had a minyan Shabbos morning. And we always have a kiddush afterwards, and people linger and talk. Our community, of course, is dwindling. There was a time when you would have to ask people would you mind moving down so I can sit down? In my case, I have the whole row to myself now. But hopefully, with newcomers, we will begin to thrive again.
For Sandra Rose, the biggest surprise wasn't how many people wanted to come. It was how quickly strangers became family.
Otherwise, I think it was just how people who didn't necessarily know each other, by the end of it, they knew each other and they were having conversations and they were exchanging, emails and families that didn't really know each other. So that was a nice thing.
Many of the conversations happened over meals. There were sold-out Shabbat dinners and home-cooked food, and one dessert that became so popular it turned into a fundraiser. And so you talked about Friday night dinner, so we might as well ask. I know you have been the chief chef, I guess, if that be fair to say, of feeding Moncton's Jewish community for many, many years. When you were planning the menus, what did you absolutely know people would want to eat?
We didn't. We thought, what can we make that we can freeze? So Carol Rensler and I sat down. Carol and I have put on many functions in the city. And we came up with our menu.
And
our menu consisted, is that what you want to hear?
I know you don't want to give away your secrets, I can already tell, but yeah.
They wanted a Shabbos supper, so naturally that included chicken. So we had cranberry roasted chicken, we had oven roasted potatoes, we had fried rice, we had Amish carrots, we had pecan kugels.
What about dessert? We need desserts. Mm-hmm.
Lee Wilson, who was the chair of the centennial year, made fresh apple pies for dessert.
For 135 people. Oh, my God.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Took us a whole day.
I do have to tell you a story about the kugels, though. The pecan kugel. Everybody was raving about the pecan kugel. And yesterday at the closing event, when people were mingling around, they were asking, we really like that. Can we get the recipe? What can we do? And I said, you know what? That's a fundraiser for the shul. So we said, if you want to support the Hanukkah dinner for a donation of $250, Anne will make you a pecan kugel.
This was without consulting Anne, by the way.
Yeah. So then we did the announcement, and we have 4 sold already, I think. Yeah, so they've raised another, $1,000 for the synagogue, and Anne's going to be making kugels.
I love it. Is that the only thing that's going forward? Is going to be the Hanukkah event, or you have more events planned for the rest of the centennial?
We have, hopefully, 3 more sponsored kiddies to do, which I will be doing. And then each sponsored kiddish is at a cost of $500.
Beautiful. And you mentioned fundraising.
Yes.
What does the synagogue need? And I'm asking this because I know that after October 7th, the synagogue was vandalized in an anti-Semitic incident, hate crime. Don't think they ever found who did it, right?
No.
But you had to do some more sort of hardware and security upgrades for the synagogue.
Basically, it's just more in need of repair and upkeep over the years. Like the roof and the ceiling, and we had a big rainstorm on Friday when we had all our gift bags lined up in the lobby, and it leaked through the window, so we ran to move those, and just little things like that just need to be looked after. The general upkeep for the Kum A Heim put in a lift for the wheelchair people, because the social hall's downstairs in the basement, and there's a lot of stairs to get up and down. If you went there's a ramp to get into the synagogue, but to get downstairs there wasn't. And there must have been probably 7 or 8 people that had mobility issues or were in a wheelchair, and they were able to get on that lift and come down and join the weekend, and then go back up again. So that was a big benefit for it. That was a result of the Kum A Heim coming around.
But it would be nice by the end of the year if we had enough fundraisers to pay for that.
But the meals were never just about the food. They were about bringing people back to the same tables where generations before them had celebrated weddings and bar mitzvahs and holiday dinners. But what exactly were all those people coming home to? The Moncton they remembered looks very different today. One of the people who came home didn't have very far to travel. Audrey Lampert still lives in Moncton. Her family, the Addises, helped build the Jewish community.
And then I talked about walking down on Main Street in those days and all the Jewish businesses that existed on Main Street. Today, there's not one. But those I called the merchants of Main Street played a vital role in the economy of the city of Moncton and provided jobs for Jews, because in those days, people wouldn't hire Jews to work for them. So they went into business for themselves. So I mentioned that. The children, now 50s and 60 years old, of those store owners, those businesses, were in the audience. And I would, mention the name of the business and then call on their child to stand up and be recognized.
What are some of the names for our listeners who may or may not have ever been connected to the city?
Sai Seafood Restaurant, Jacobson's Furniture Store, Marx's Ladies Wear, A.J. Babang Wholesale, Mike Bake, who became mayor of the city from 1957 to 61. He had a furniture store there. My in-laws had a furniture store in Moncton. Betty Rubin had a store. The Rubin family had a store. What else was there? Let me just think for a minute. There was a gift and jewelry store owned by Pearl and Ethel Begg. There was Fine's Ladies Wear, Macy's Ladies Wear, Addis's Ladies Wear, run by my aunt in the 40s and 50s. It just went on and on and on. Steve's Watch and Jewelry moved to Highfield Square, so they were a merchant in Main Street. Gorber's Grocery Store, little grocery store, Hans's Grocery Store, Cohen's Grocery Store, where it is said Mrs. Molly Cohen and her son Nathan work very hard to send their brother and son, Reuben Cohen, to university. Reuben became a very prominent Canadian businessman. I mean, none of these people are alive anymore. And some of their descendants were at the Kum A Heim.
Okay, I have to ask you, size seafood. So they didn't sell lobster, right? Only kosher fish?
It's funny, it was a very popular place, even for like non-kosher Jews to go and have seafood. So the restaurant is long gone.
I've heard a lot of stories about how people would, if you're living in the Maritimes and you're Jewish, put like newspaper on the table and then they would have lobster once in a while because that's what one did.
Ellen, there are people in my family who were kept strictly kosher homes, but out in their garage, they had a set of dishes and cutlery for the lobster season. That is how it worked. I don't know, Ellen, if you were in Moncton when Nathan's Veranda was a big, big part of the. No.
I don't
So
remember. It could be.
that was a prominent institution amongst the Jews of Moncton, the Jewish men. They all used to gather on Nathan's Veranda. So I talked a little bit about Nathan's Veranda. That was the veranda of Nathan Shalou, who was an older member of the community who played a big role in the show. And the men used to meet there every single day of the week except Shabbos. They stopped Friday afternoon and they didn't go back until Sunday morning to play cards and kibitz and etc. So that was a real prominent institution in the city.
And was a little bit of schnapps involved too?
Oh, yes, and swearing.
Okay.
Like my mother would never allow me to go on Nathan's veranda. I was forbidden. So after Hebrew school, when I walked home with Nathan's grandson, he would stop there to get a lift home, and I could get the lift home with them sometimes, but I wasn't allowed to step foot on the veranda while he went in to get his grandfather to drive him home. I think my mother thought perhaps my naive ears were innocent ears should not be exposed to whatever went on the veranda.
A very emotional part of the weekend wasn't inside the synagogue. It happened at the cemetery. Families walked among the graves of parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. Some hadn't been back in decades.
Well, I think going to the cemetery for sure, walking around with people who had not visited their parents for many decades because, like many of our young Jewish people, 50, 40, 30, 20 years ago, they moved on to Montreal or Toronto. And some never returned because they didn't have close family left here. So to get them all together was wonderful.
Sandra Rose and Anne Jockelman were equally moved by their cemetery visit.
We had a tree that we had planted about a month or so ago, and then we had a plaque made up, and it was dedicated to the Tiferes Israel 100th anniversary, and it had the dates on it. So we had called it a walk in our shoes, and we all went out on Sunday, and we did a dedication talking about how the tree is, it's 100 years, and now we're planting a new tree, hoping it's going to take root in the ground, representing, the next generation coming up. The rabbi did a prayer at the tree, and then everyone went up into the cemetery, and they found their family sites. A lot of them, there were some older people here, and it was their parents, then grandparents or great grandparents, and there were families that came. So they were also the parents were here, but they also brought their children, whether they were in their 20s or their teens. So that was kind of good for them, and they got up to go, this is your grandfather, this is your great grandfather, and they went around to the different sites, and they did some prayers on them, and it was just nice. Everybody just had a casual hour and a half.
Then after the cemetery, they came back to the show for mugs and muffins, and that was the social gathering and the goodbyes and the tears, and it was good.
Why tears?
Some we do not know when we'll see them again, and for others we know we won't see them again. Older,
Yeah.
ailments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There was quite a few people here that were in their 90s.
Yeah.
They came back to one last time to see, and they brought their children and their grandchildren, and their children brought their children. And so there was multi-generations here that came as families. So it was really nice to see that.
people I hadn't seen in years. And then that's when you realize, you're the elders of the community now. It's not your grandfather anymore. We're that generation. And it gives you a good feeling, but it gives you a strange feeling as well.
Well, Sandra, you're not even living in Moncton anymore,
Yeah.
and now you're that generation of the new leaders. For you, how was it to assume that mantle? I guess.
He was hoodwinked into it.
I was hoodwinked into it, yeah. No, it was good because I thought that it's in my background to organize events like that. So I liked getting to know all the people that have come in that I didn't know from Moncton. I come down for I'm still a member of the synagogue, and I come down for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur or any special event, but I don't get to see them every Saturday or every small thing that goes on. So it was nice to meet, I want to say, the younger people that I hadn't really gotten to know before. And I think there was a kind of a good bond made that way. So I think it's something that can move forward with the synagogue and with the community, the younger people.
After months of planning and hundreds of meals, I asked Anne whether she'd do it again.
To be honest with you, there were days I would say to Sandra, that's it, I'm through. This is the end of it. One more person tells me what to do, they can take it. I've had it. But then you go to bed, you wake up in the morning and you say, okay, what do we do today? Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Though I did say, anybody who wants to sign up for the next 100-year celebration, here's the paper. I'm not doing it.
And Audrey Lampert ended her Friday night remarks with a challenge. She calls it passing the baton.
I challenged them with passing on the baton of generational traditions, in a baton in a race, a relay race of generational traditions to carry on what we inherited to them. But the problem, Ellen, is my children are all in Toronto. We're here. And they're living in a completely different kind of world from where they grew up and where I grew up. And their children are being brought up in this world of artificial intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to go into detail, but I left them with that thought and challenge to carry on our traditions.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounded like for this episode of North Star, made possible thanks to Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin's Charitable Foundation. To see photos from the weekend and learn how to donate, go to the links in our show notes. And are you from Moncton, or did your family grow up in the area? Why not write to us and share your memories of how Moncton impacted your life? We're at info@thecjn.ca. North Star is produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman and Izzy Helenchild, with Michael Freeman, the executive producer, and Alicia Richler, the editorial director. Thanks for listening.